Everyone can hear, right? Thank you. So, I'm Harsha. I'm a final year PhD student. So, I'm a final year PhD student. That's fine. So, basically, my work is so what I do is I deal with the mitigation and adaptation sections. So the gist of my work is basically so we consider the transportation sector emissions and what is the source, like how they are generating and what policies can be developed to reduce these emissions. And the other, so that comes under mitigation. And for the adaptation part, what we do is, so once the flooding, so in my work, what I have considered is urban flooding as a threat to the transportation sector. So in case if that happens, what are the policies that we need to develop so that your transportation sector goes like as it is, if not close to what it is when there is no flood, at least close to that. So that's the base of my work, and all this metro, BMTC, and all. So these are different policies that I have evaluated as a part of my work. So as the title says, the projects and policies and sustainability impact assessment. So I think, so how many are from Bangalore here? Most of them are from Bangalore, right? So not just in Bangalore, anywhere if you take, there are a lot of projects, that are, always happening every now and then. But is there any impact assessment being done? Like, so let us say a flyover is being constructed. So we all think that, if the flyover is constructed only, it reduces congestion, that is the main, thought we all have. But what happens after that? Like how you translate it into fuel consumptions, how you translate it into emissions, and is it sustainable or not? So this is what is required, other than simply saying that there is a traffic jam here, so we need a flyover through it. So what I'm talking here is, so I'll discuss about metro, how it is useful in place of flyovers and all that, and like sir mentioned, I'll talk about BMTC, how you can make BMTC more attractive. So this is the first section where I deal with the metro. So we all know that so this is a simple introduction that I would like to give. So our economy is increasing, so we are one of the fastest growing economies, right? So this is generating a lot of employment. So what this is making is, people are getting attracted to the cities, and people go in for their employment and all that. This has two major, this leads to two major things: urbanization and increased vehicle growth. So let us say maybe, everyone has their own perception about increased vehicle growth. Maybe the automobile industry might be thinking that, we are getting lots and lots of profits and all, people are buying vehicles and all that. So that's their perspective. But what is the other side of it? Like you must be happy that, I'm going to buy a vehicle today, I'm going to buy a car, our family can, go in and all that. So you will have lots and lots of ideas behind purchasing a vehicle. But what happens after that, which we usually don't think? So this leads to traffic congestion, pollution, and local temperature rise. Local temperature rise also occurs due to urbanization. This heat islands and all, they form up and they increase the local temperature. And this is leading to the threat to sustainability, livability, and resilience. Everyone knows the meaning of sustainability, right? Okay. For those who doesn't know, sustainable is, you have few resources, natural resources that are left out, right? So whatever that you are doing, so it should not deplete these sources for the future generations. So you need to sustain them, for the other generations. So that is what sustainability means. And resilience is like, you have various options of, commuting or maneuvering here and there. So what has become is, it has become difficult and dangerous to commute. So like I was mentioning, so is building a flyover a solution? How many of you think that this is a solution? Before me talking about all this, how many would have thought that this is a solution? Okay. So this is what we are going to, find out how you evaluate and all that. So this is the key plan of the proposed elevated corridor of the Bangalore. It's approximately 92.2 kilometers. 19,265 crores. So this doesn't include the land acquisition cost. Including it, it was coming out to be 30,000 crores. Okay, and land acquired is 57 hectares, and entry exit ramps is 53. So this is connecting this east-west and north-south corridors and all that. Everything is fine. It's a 4-lane, and at some stretches, and 6-lane at some stretches and all that. So this is the the detailed plan of the information about the elevated corridor. You can see all the what are 6 lanes, what are 4 lanes and all that, and corridor length and all that. So one thing that we have to notice here is this. So does this make any, does this give you any idea like what is this 53? So what do they do? 53 entry exit ramps. Sorry. Any other answer? Sorry. Yeah, that is normal. So that's the purpose of this. So yeah, so like he was mentioning, it is causing bottleneck points. So you would have observed it at many locations. Let us say a 4-lane road is there. So once the flyover comes, it becomes, let us say, a 2-lane, and all the vehicles try to converge there. So imagine so the city is already congested, and upon that you are adding 53 bottleneck points, right? So that's a lot. So how we evaluated this work is we have divided it into, we have done it in 2 sections, 2 studies basically. So in one, what we have done is we just assume that there is a certain growth rate of vehicles or traffic, and we have estimated the volume to capacity ratios to check that if the flyover that is being built, is it good enough or not. And so that's a simple calculations. The other one is doing it in a forces travel demand model, where we consider all the this OD matrix travel patterns, and then we estimate the vehicle kilometers traveled and then emissions and all that. Everyone have an idea about forces travel demand modeling, right? Yeah. So before going to this, so in study 1 I was telling about calculation of volume to capacity ratios, right? So what is a level of service? So it's a qualitative measure of how your traffic condition is, in terms of what is the speed that you are going, what is the travel time. So are you being obstructed by any vehicle close to you and all that. So freedom to maneuver, traffic interruptions, comfort and convenience and all that. So there are 6 levels of service from A to F, and with A being the best and F being the worst. And so it is again in 2 terms, like one is for signalized intersections, the other one is for unsignalized intersections. So in India, what we usually consider is like V by C ratios. Depending on the V by C that we have, we say that this certain section of the network is at a particular level of service. So just for your understanding, low level of service A is free flow, where you don't have any obstruction, like for you and another vehicle there is a lot of distance, and you're not being affected by any other. So you don't have anything close to your surroundings. With F being the worst, forced flow, like bumper to bumper traffic, you have too much of interruptions, stop and go traffic and all that. According to IRC 990, so we consider 0.77, 0.7 as our design level of service, where the V by C is taken as 0.7 and the flow is stable, but there are delays which are acceptable still. So now what we have to figure out is, in this part of evaluation, we need to find the level of service of the roads that we are going to evaluate. What happens if the flyover comes? So are you improving the level of service there, or is it still the same? If it is still the same, then what is the point of building an elevated corridor, right? So this is the data that we have got. Professor Verma happened to be in a meeting with the deputy CM, and this was given by the KRD CL. Yeah. So they had given us all this, the major junctions with their peak hour flows and the total flows in PCUs. And of all this, the top one is the KR Puram bridge, which for the familiar ones, for the ones in Bangalore who are very familiar with this. So it's a quite congested junction. So there are like 4 roads at one stretch, and you have a normal pedestrian traffic coming from the railway station and all that. And there is a entry exit. There is also an entry exit ramp there, so which is causing congestion. And there is also a bus stop there, where people try to stop there. So that junction is it's huge in terms of congestion and traffic and all that. So to evaluate this, we have considered the roadway capacities from Indo-HCM in 2018, and the capacity for a 4-lane divided urban roads is 2,700 PCUs per hour per direction, and for a 6-lane divided road, it's 4,200 PCUs per hour per direction. Okay. So with this as a basis, we started like evaluating the V/Cs and all that. Now what we have to do, so what we thought is, instead of going with one simple scenario, so it's always good to have multiple options at your disposal, multiple analysis, so that you can come to a very good conclusion like what's happening in all this, right? So we have considered 3 major scenarios, and scenarios for metro again. Okay. So in the scenario 1, what we have considered is, like we've already discussed about the Climatrans work, where the traffic growth rate is found out to be 6.67%. Okay. So that growth rate we have considered, and in scenario 2, what we have considered is average growth rate of the registered vehicles in Bangalore city, so is 10%. So that is one scenario. In scenario 3, what we thought is like assumption that car ownership is doubling up every 5 years, and so as the traffic. Okay. And coming to metro, we have again had 2 scenarios, single track and double track. Again in double track, we have 2 cases where you assume that half of the passengers are shifting to metro, and what if everyone is shifting to metro? So you just imagine, like we are just yeah.
So the metro scenario is nothing but the same David corridor to run metro services.
Yeah, so this is for that. And we have assumed that by 2020 the elevated corridor would come in to use, and what will happen after that. Of course, that's not going to possible, that won't happen, but still it's an assumption. You can pick an year, you can forecast your population, employment, traffic patterns and all that, and you can come up with your own OD matrix, and it's up to you. Maybe if you assume that if the elevated corridor is coming up in 2025, you take your base year traffic data, you forecast it to 2025, and then you can model your own so we have calculated this volume to capacity ratios. So I was mentioning all these scenarios, right? So altogether we get 15 scenarios. So what you're getting here is a broader perspective of what is happening. So which one is the best? What are the various options that you can go to? Maybe you can create more. It's up to us. Like you can develop a scenario, you model it, you come to a conclusion, you give a perspective like this can happen if you do this. Okay. So what you can see here is this WF is with elevated corridor. You can still see that the level of service. So this is, it's clear. Can you guys see? Okay. So you can see that the V/C here is 1.11, 1.67. It's still at the level of service F. It's above 1. That with the flyover. Okay. And yeah, and this is in 2020 and this is in 2030. And if you see in 2030, it's getting much more worse, 6.67 in scenario 3, right? Where you assume that the car ownership is doubling up every 5 years. if you look at this metro scenarios, S1 MC, S1 MC1 ST, so which means metro case 1 single track, this is that, and scenario 1 is 6.67 growth rate if you consider that. So you can see that the V by C's are quite low, you know, it's almost close to, you know, if you look at that B, C and all that, maybe even less. So from this you can, you know, get a perspective that, you know, this elevated corridor is not going to do much of a help, you know, and this we have estimated where at Kerapuram junction bridge. Now, similarly, you can pick an area that you want, you find out the flow there. Flows were already given to us. Maybe in that list you can take another junction and say that, you know, this is the flow and this is the capacity depending on the lanes. You know, you can come up with your own conclusions. So like, see here, there is no change in LOS, it's still F, and if it's the same case in 2030 as well. And why is metro, like I think sir had already explained the capacity of the metro, 69,000 passenger per hour per direction. So that huge capacity is going to suck up all the traffic from the road. So that's why you find, I'll show it in the next coming slides, how in the travel demand model you'll see how metro is, you know, grabbing all the traffic from the nearby roads and, you know, creating better V by C values on the road.
So actually, you know, just to add to the point, so you are showing the capacity of the elevated corridor in PCU. If you just take, it's passenger car unit, so if you just take a occupancy, average occupancy of cars and convert that into persons per hour per direction, that capacity is 1/10 or even less of what you get from running a metro system on the same track. And that's how you get so much of difference in the level of service in the elevated corridor scenario and in the metro scenario if you run metro system on the same road.
And that too having a double track of metro, that is like, you know, you're providing a huge capacity where you can, you know, reduce your V by C's like anything on the road surface. So what we thought is how can we show, like, at what year we are going to reach the saturation level. So where we'll reach that V by C is as high as 0.99 for metro. So if you look here, in case of scenario 1, you know, the metro is reaching its saturation level in 2060 in single track case 1, and in double track it is reaching at 2070, and it's still 0.95, it's still reaching 1, but you still have some capacity left out there, not like on the roads where, you know, you overshoot the, you know, capacities. And similarly in scenario 2, you know, the saturation is coming out at 2046 for single track and 2053 for you know, double track. And in scenario 3, 2037 you will reach the saturation for a single track and 2042 for a double track, right?
Again, you know, just to add, this elevated corridor, the cost of the elevated corridor that was estimated was about 33,000 crores for this 102 kilometers. So if you take out a per kilometer cost, it's about 350 crores per kilometer. Whereas the typical cost of per kilometer elevated metro is about 250 you know, crores per kilometer. So I mean, any layman can understand this mathematics of how you are gaining capacity versus what is your infrastructure cost, and how can you then justify these kind of, you know, road projects in the city.
Yeah. So from this study, what I can summarize is, you know, the Kerapuram bridge, if you construct an elevated corridor flyover, it is still going to be at the same level of service F. But if you replace that with the metro, you still have, you know, 40 years, 50 years, you know, 2060, 2020, 260, like you still have 40 years to reach the saturation level right? That's a quite a lot. And this is the second study that we have done in case of replacing the same elevated corridor stretch with the metro. So this is the entire study area. This is the BMR zonal map, and this is the road network. And I think you would have, you already have an understanding of all this. Yes, yes. So for this study, again, we have considered 3 scenarios. So the first one is like BAU. Second one is so BAU is where elevated corridor is not constructed. The scenario 1 is what if elevated corridor is constructed, and scenario 2 is what if metro is constructed instead of the elevated corridor on the same stretch. Okay, so these are the 3 scenarios that we have considered, and we have gone through the 4-stage travel demand modeling of productions, attractions, distribution, mode choice, and all that. So we have we have forecasted this traffic from the base year to 2020, and we thought we'll check how the trip lengths are reducing. So in case if you construct elevator, so this is the BAU where the trip lengths of private vehicles in 2020 16.5 average trip length, okay, and for public transport it's around 14.3 kilometers. So what's happening is once you construct flyover, your trip lengths are coming down because you found a nice place to go through. You don't have to juggle through all those streets and all that. So people just directly reach there, and then they can go to their destinations. So if metro is constructed on the same place, people are shifting towards metro. You are removing out some of the traffic on the roads. So that's why you see a reduction in trip lengths here. Coming to public transportation, so now you are adding. So what happens is you are adding an extra public transport network now because of thinking that this is the entire metro network, right? So you see that there is increase in the average trip length that are traveled. So that is for 2020, and you see the similar trend in 2030 as well. People are taking their shortest paths and all that. So now the elevated corridor is constructed. So to use that, these people have put up tolls. So that is an extra cost to your travel, right? So these are the toll costs that are provided in the DPR. So this is per kilometer, and this is corridor length, and we have the corridor length details and the per kilometer price they have put for each modes. And one more thing that I have to tell you is on flyover only car, two-wheeler and buses are only allowed. You are not allowed to play autos on that. So what's happening here is so this is an extra cost that I told her. So what it affects is your mode choice in the model. So this is an extra cost that you need to pay daily, or maybe you take monthly pass and all. Maybe it looks fine for some time, but then you start thinking about it, and then your expenses go up and all that. So we have translated that per kilometer cost to the total travel cost and all that, and then per passenger how much it is adding up, and then you add these costs into your mode choice model. So we have developed a mode choice model, and once we analyze that, what you can see here is this is BAU scenario 1 and scenario 2. Scenario 1 is where the flyover is, scenario 2 is where the elevated corridor, where the metro is considered. You can see that there is an increase in the mode share of car. Any guesses why this is happening? So the reason is car, two-wheeler people are using more now. Because of this provision of elevated corridor, you are providing them a very nice way. The speeds have shot up like anything. They can reach their destinations at a very faster pace. Then people start buying their new vehicles. So there's a term called as induced demand. So you are widening roads, you are providing all these facilities for them to buy. So this is fine for a while. So what happens after it gets congested?
So actually, what's happening is due to addition of the elevated corridor, in your influencing the mode choice, since your travel times are increased for travel times are reduced for car, two-wheeler, and auto rickshaw. No, what is
Auto-wheeler,
third?
bus.
Yeah, but and due to that, decrease in the travel time, your mode share is increasing for these modes, as well as there is also influence on route choice. So people who are taking different routes are now coming to these routes. The network effect that Tarun was talking yesterday. So the cumulative effect is the increase in mode share, and also, as you will see, more vehicle miles on for these modes.
Sorry?
In this kind of scenario, what the LOIs would be? Either it would be A or B.
We'll
or
see
C.
that results.
Yeah.
We have
So that
also
will come.
estimated the LOS.
Yeah. So it's the same trend you can observe in 2030 also. People are shifting towards car because of their travel, increase in travel speeds, reduction in travel times and all that. Two-wheelers and autos. Now that you have a facility of using your own car or two-wheeler, you don't have to choose an auto, because auto is anyways not taking the flyover, and so that's not their utility is less if they take auto. And you can also see that public transportation has increase in their mode share, because again it's the same travel times and all that. And now see, so how this mode share is translated into your vehicle kilometers traveled. Now people have started using their own cars, two-wheelers and all. So now you see more and more of traffic running on these roads. So there is an increase in this might sound like a small number here, but it's in millions per day. That's a it's a huge difference. So it has increased from 36.82 to 37.82 here, which is a 2.7% increase for scenario 1, and it is reducing by 5.3% in case of scenario 2, where you consider metro. So why this is reducing is because private vehicles have shifted to metro now. Not all private, there is some shift towards metro. So there is less number of vehicles on the road now. Because of that, there is a reduction in the number of vehicle kilometers traveled. And it's the same thing in 2030 as well. So graphically, if we look at this, how it looks. So this is, so what you see here is the this entire Bangalore metropolitan region road network, where black signifies like high V/Cs, green is like less V/Cs, and
So
orange.
if I just add the difference between the study 1 and study 2. In study 1, we just focused on that corridor and neglecting any influence on the demand patterns, whether in terms of mode choice or route choice, etc. Just doing the analysis of what is that existing traffic on that corridor, how it's going to increase through a projection through simple rate of increase. But here what we are doing is, because when you have these kind of interventions, it has a complete network impact. It's not concentrated on just one corridor. So what we are simulating here is the impact of providing that corridor onto the V/C ratio on the complete network, because you are seeing change in mode choice, you are seeing change in route choice.
Yeah. So if you look at these three figures closely, you can see that this is scenario 2, where you see less of orange and black and all that, right? So this is for 2020, and if you look at 2030, it becomes much more horrible. So your V/Cs are increasing like anything. Your capacity is the same, but you're adding more volume to it. So where will it go? It's all there. So that is what we are seeing here. So if I zoom it in, so what you can see here is, you can see this broad bands and all, right? So that is the elevated corridor section, which you don't see here, neither here, because this is a elevated corridor scenario. And if you look closely, so you can see orange around, distributed evenly like that. But if you see here, most of the part is taken by the elevated corridor, this broad orange part, and the nearby areas are left out towards the green side, which means that it's taking a lot of traffic onto it and it's congesting the flyover. And if you provide metro, you can see most of it in green, yellow, and little bit of orange and red here and there. So this is what is happening. So this is how the elevator corridor is going to get congested in 2020, and this is how it is going to be in 2030. So black is above 0.1, so there is no point in, so what is the point? You're investing 33,000 crores, and in 10 years your city is again getting congested.
So in a more layman sense, what this kind of big road infrastructure projects does is they becomes like a large conduit. So they try to suck, trips happening from other parts of the network and suck it towards it, in the process getting itself congested. So you'd see that there's more heavy load coming on those elevated corridor networks, whereas even in BA you see it more spread out. There are other links which are, so other links are probably getting less congested, but the congestion is getting more on the elevated corridor itself.
So here there is no congestion, and also from this we can infer that metro is providing you a better service in terms of your carrying capacity or reduction in congestion and all that. Later we'll translate this into emissions as well. Okay. So like you were asking how the V/Cs will change. Earlier in BAU scenario, so we have again considered Kerpuram junction so that we can compare this with the scenario, the study one. Okay. So in BAU the V/C is about 1.9. Okay. So that's in 2020. So this is from the model. This is not from the in scenario 1 on the bridge, which is elevated corridor, you have a V/C of, if you provide the elevated corridor, you have a V/C of 2.23. It is still higher than it's again LOSF. In scenario 2, if you provide metro, your V/C is 0.08, which is a huge difference again. So this is on bridge. So from this what you can see that under bridge, below the bridge, so once you construct the elevated corridor, initially it was like 1.9, now it has come down to 0.61, and this has become 2.23 because all the neighboring vehicles are also coming on this. So it's not like 1.9 minus 0.61 is the value that you need to see here. That's not the case, because you find a lot of vehicles coming from a little farther distance, because everyone knows that there is a flyover here, I can go fast. But they come there and they realize that okay, there is congestion here, and they get stuck. So that's what is happening here. And this is in 2020, and in 2030 what you see is V/C is 3.18 on the bridge, and under the bridge is 0.81. Again it's the same thing, it's sucking up the entire traffic, congesting the elevated corridor. And 0.08 on elevated metro corridor, and 0.58 under the bridge, which is still at a good LOS. I think Professor Verma already talked about these emissions and all that, scenarios and all. So we have translated the same into emissions and all that. So you can see that the metro is quite high here, because so it's about the electricity generation. I hope you already have a clear idea about why these emissions are high and all that. So yeah, so if you look at the per capita emissions here, so what is happening here is these autos, cars, two-wheelers are emitting quite high than your the buses, people traveling in buses and metro, which means that if you're traveling by a bus or a metro, you're contributing less because of the high occupancy values, right? And this is for CO2, and it's the same for PM. This is the total vehicular emissions. Again, if you translate it into per capita, you see how less you're contributing as a person, as an individual, okay, not as a vehicle. So that is what the per capita emissions is about. So here what I am trying to show you is to what extent you can go. So we have considered different electricity scenarios, right? So what I will show you here is electricity scenario 4 just for your, you know, yeah, 100% renewable power source, okay. So to what extent you can go, if you shift to a renewable power source, you are reducing about 16% of CO and from the BAU scenario, and 5% in hydrocarbons, and NOx 50%, and CO2 you can reduce about 81%. So this is, you can go to that extent, that is the possibility that you have. It's up to you to decide if you can do that or not. And PM you can achieve 50% reduction. This is for 2020, and you know, similarly in 2030 what you observe is, you can observe a reduction about 83%, and you know, 70% of reduction in PM can be achieved. And again, it's the same reductions that we can see. And from this what we can see that is, like, you know, you propose an elevated corridor and you replace that with a metro corridor. So what I have not mentioned earlier is, so how is the entire travel time in the entire system is changing. If you provide a elevated corridor, okay, so there is 8% reduction in the total system travel time, because you are providing you know, nicer path for these guys. So you know, travel speeds are, you know, high and all that, you know, reduction in travel. So there you can see a reduction in travel time of 8%. If you provide a metro system, then you can see a 40% reduction in the total travel time of this entire system, entire BMR system. Okay. So that's in 2020, and in 2030 you can see that a 5.3% reduction in travel time if you provide elevated corridor, and 53.4 reduction in travel time for scenario 2. So this is another indication to say that, you know, metro is a better choice if you have to commute fast, right? And again, you know, you find out that CO2 and PM emissions are reducing in these scenarios. If you provide metro, you have less emissions and all that. But what we need to know is, so what can we recommend? So when you are proposing a, you know, project, so what you need to know is what is the amount of you know, person capacity that you are introducing into the infrastructure, right? So what is the amount of person capacity that is added per unit of investment made? So you need to reap the benefits of what you are investing. So why not, you know, get the maximum out of it? So how many people can, so like, you know, the main theme of the transportation engineering is move people, not vehicles, right? So you need to, yeah.
So if you look at these 4 bullet points, the idea is, you know, tomorrow again, you know, if Yedurappa, you know, comes and says that, look, I'll construct this road or flyover and those things, we have to keep asking these 4 questions to them. That please give a, yeah. So I'm saying, you know, anybody who comes and say that, look, you know, I'm going to solve your traffic problem by constructing this elevated corridor, first you should laugh at them and, you know, say that, you know, don't consider it as fools, okay. And then you should ask them to answer these questions in a most unbiased manner to justify their proposed plan. First is, what is the amount of person capacity added per unit of investment made? It's about what is the output I'm getting per unit of investment. I would, of course, like to maximize my output per unit of investment, isn't it? And my output is the person capacity that I can add per unit of investment I'm doing in infrastructure cost. Second is, what is the amount of person capacity added per unit of space width created? So the idea is, any extra space of movement that you're creating, how much again you're adding a person capacity. Now you may add an extra lane on the road, or construct a new flyover or a new road, okay, based on what system you are running on it. You can allow it for normal traffic, or you can allow and give bus lanes on that extra lane that you are creating, or you can run a tramway, a light rail, or use that space to run your metro system. In each case, how much of that capacity I am adding? If I run a normal traffic, then the capacity I am adding for the same space that I have added, extra space, is much lesser than what I would add with some other mode of transport, isn't it? Because today space is a very valuable commodity in an urban setup, and a city like Bangalore where land prices are so high, and when you propose to widen a road, you would end up acquiring a lot of properties, disturbing a lot of properties, their businesses, their houses, by acquiring the property. You can't let that hardship that people had for generating a peanut of capacity, when you can generate more capacity out of that. Third is, what amount of fossil fuel consumption will change. Now again, we have been saying that any transport system that will make us more oil dependent is not something that we would like to have. We would like to reduce our dependence on fossil fuel. So by introducing your proposed project or infrastructure, whether total petrol diesel consumption will increase or decrease. If it is increasing, again, what is the rationale? Why are we doing that? Fourth is, by what amount the air and noise pollution will change. If by getting that and introducing that, if my exhaust emissions are going to increase, then why I am doing that? So every such proposal that the government comes and makes, we should ask them to answer these questions, and then make a judgment which project is good, which is not good. So the point is how such kind of scientific analysis and use of models can influence the policy decisions and decisions of the government. So this work that we have done, this paper we have done, on occasions during my personal meetings, I have given this to the Deputy Chief Minister and Chief Minister. I have explained them how your proposed elevated corridor is going to look like in terms of these things. Okay, the citizens group have used this report and went to court and filed public interest litigations, and today the fact is that the High Court has put a stay on this project because of these technical reports and analysis that we have given. So this is how we have the power to influence things in the city.
Yeah, so that is about this elevated corridor, metro story and all that. So now what I am going to talk in the coming, in the next work is how you improve your public transportation system. We have always been talking that, people have to shift to public transportation system, they have to use, buses, metro and all that, but how do you make them shift to it? So what are the policies that you can employ so that, people shift to it, and how do you evaluate or analyze what is happening, how the shift is happening and what happens post shift, right? So that is what I am going to talk about here. So what is the motivation behind this study? So in Bangalore, so the average peak hour speeds fell down from 10 kilometers per hour in 2011 to 5 kmph in 2018, which is quite bad. 5 kilometers per hour is like, you're like pushing your bike or, bus, something like that. And also we have a stagecoach fare system. So I'll talk about this in the coming sections, because I've considered this as one of the scenarios. This is just for your information that I've put here. Inter-stop distance is 650 meters, which is quite high compared to the international standards. So inter-stop distance is, from one stop to another stop, what is the distance that we have. So imagine if a person is left in between, either of the places. So where does he have to, go, this bus stop or this bus stop? He needs to be, he needs to have a bus stop close by. Otherwise, he would shift, his utility is going to come down, right? And he would shift his mode from a bus to another, private transport, autos, cabs and all, everything is readily available right now. So this is one thing, so which we have not considered in this study, but this is just for your understanding. And we have major traffic congested roads have enough width for BRT implementation, but none was implemented, like Outer Ring Road, or there are many roads where you can consider BRT, but which was not done. So what is the objective? So we thought that we'll try to increase the revenues of the BMTC by employing some policies, what can be done, and at the end we always concentrate on reducing the emissions. We have considered these pollutants, NOx, PM, CO2, CO and all that. So I won't go into this literature review and all that. So because all of these studies, what they say is that everyone has to shift to public transportation system, you need these policies in place, you do that, you do this, but one guy says that nothing has been done. Everyone has been saying it, but nothing was implemented. So this is what the literature is all about, like how different models have been put in space, like Verma had developed hub and spoke model to reduce the delays at these bus stops, scheduling delays and bus bunching. So that is one work. And Climatrans, we have already talked in the earlier sections, like what policies can be implemented to make your public transportation a little more attractive. So coming to BMTC, this is a small glimpse that I would like to give, and this is the trend over the past few years. Right now it's around 6,823. It goes up and down. In number of schedules 6,144 and revenue 49.6 in million. And this is the area where primarily BMTC operates, which was taken as a study area. And earlier in the study I have showed the entire BMR. It has 384 TAZs, traffic analysis zones. So in this we have considered only 330, because this is the prime area of serving of BMTC we would like to analyze. Okay. So for this analysis we need, so yeah. Yeah. So for this, what we have for private vehicles, so we need to make few assumptions when you are doing an analysis. So this is like a data that we have developed for private vehicles. What is the cost? That is adding up to their travel patterns. So for that we have considered it as fuel cost. In public transportation, it's the fare. Okay, and we use the stage-wise fare for ordinary services, because that is the data that we could get from the BMTC. And again, coming to the fuel cost, there are two situations. One is the congestion average, and one is the free flow average. For congestion average, we have considered 35 kmph for two-wheeler and 10 for car. For free flow, 50 for two-wheeler and 18 for car. For public transport, we have considered 5 kmph as a peak hour congestion speeds. For private transport in congestion, we have considered 10 kmph in densely populated areas and all that. So in business as usual scenario, what we have done is nothing changes. So that's what BAU is, right? So every parameter was not is the same. Nothing has been moved here and there, and all the variables have been forecasted for the future years with the base information that we have. Productions and attractions of all the 330 zones in the modeling area are predicted using the forecasted population and employment for the 2018 and past data and all that. So we have considered two scenarios in this study. The first one is the fare restructuring. How is the existing fare of BMTC, and what changes can be made so that people would like to shift to it. So that is one scenario that we have considered. The other scenario is BRT. So like sir was talking about, instead of increasing the road width to add few more vehicles, private vehicles to it, why don't you make it as a BRT? So that we have considered in this study. Yeah, so this is the stage-wise fare that we have here in place, which was given to us by BMTC. Of course, they have been claiming that each stage is for 2 kilometers, but when we looked at their data and all that, we figured out that stage distance is not actually 2 kilometers. Sometimes it's much more less. So which means that you're paying more for what you're actually traveling. So that was observed in few cases. Okay. Yeah. So if you look at the existing fare, it's it starts at a very low level, and you see a gradual increase. So that's how the fare is as the distance is moving up. So I will show you this in a plot, and then you'll understand. So this is how the increase is. You can find a steep rise here, and then it is slowly gradually coming down. So it's following a logarithmic pattern. Okay. What we have done is, instead of putting it in a logarithmic pattern, we provided a gradual, we smoothen the curve a bit, to the upper side. So for the
the point here is the existing fare system, what it is doing is, when we say that there is a steep increase initially, I mean the fare for different stages increases rapidly. The rate of increase is much higher as compared to for longer distances, because it kinds of stabilizes. Okay, it's kind of that diminishing marginal utility that Abdul was talking about, as the distance gauge. So what this essentially means is that the current stage-based fare structure is discouraging shorter trips to come on buses as compared to longer. So a lot of shorter trips are not being captured by BMTC. So what we did was simple tapering of that and make the initial increase more gradual, slower, so that also encourages more shorter trips to come on. So it's just a simple policy change, how this would translate. Yeah, so again, one has to see in perspective what influence you are doing. In railways, it's a different story, because maybe it's a different story because rail system is used for longer here, if you see the trip length distribution in the city, it is typically skewed towards short. You have more number of short distance trips as compared to longer distance. But if you're losing out a lot on them, then you're losing a lot of trips. It's also that you want more people to come on to public transport so that you can reduce the congestion. So a simple a policy change, you just flatten out and rework the stage fare structure and how this would make impact.
Yeah. So basically, where we try to taper this, this curve is essentially from 4 to 12. So for that kilometers, 4 to 12 kilometers is where people are actually paying more than what people are paying for the longer distances. So which is quite a discouragement for them. So let us say if I have to travel just 2 stages, let us say 4 kilometers, I'm paying like some some 8 to 10 rupees, which if I travel another few extra miles, which I don't have to, but this is just a hypothetical say, I'm paying quite less. So that puts a thought in your head, thinking that I'm paying more, why do I have to? Like instead I can take my own bike, just go to the corner of the shop, get my things and come back. So that is one thing. In the second one, as I mentioned, BRT, we thought we'll implement BRT at certain sections. We have not considered the sections where metro has been proposed. Okay. So there are other major corridors where we thought that BRT can be implemented. We looked at the width of the road, and we thought that even if you provide BRT, you have enough space left out for the private vehicles also to go. So like that, we have shortlisted 4 potential BRT corridors, and about 50 kilometers of BRT track has been considered in this analysis. And it is assumed that public transportation bus speed is assumed to be 30 kilometers, like I mentioned earlier. It also includes frequent stops, what is the dwell time, and what is the free flow plus the free flow speed and all that. So where this affects primarily is your travel time, because you're providing a separate track for the buses. The travel times of buses may increase, that you don't know yet. So once you model that only, you'll know. So there will be change in the travel time, okay, and also there will be change in the travel cost, and change in travel times for the private vehicles and all that. So this is how you visualize where whatever the changes you are making, where it is affecting in your model, okay. And we have done trip generation, and forecasted this population, forecasted the traffic and all that. And again we have plotted the trip length distribution to check how your trip lengths are changing, right. Now we have changed our fare system, I mentioned, right. So if you look at this, this is bus travel demand, trip length distribution. The top part that you see is BRT, the gray color is BRT. I don't think, yeah, and the orange one is the fare scenario, and the blue one is the BAU scenario. So what essentially you can see here is, by implementing these two scenarios, you are letting people travel more for the shorter distances. You are reducing the fare, and you are providing a BRT also and all. In this scenario, what you can observe is, by providing BRT, you are reducing your travel times much lesser, and people pay more attention to travel time than fare. So that is what you observe here. They don't mind paying a few extra bucks if you are dropping them early at their location. So that is what is observed here. On the other hand, if you look here, so cars trip lengths are coming down because people started shifting towards bus, right. BAU is quite high, and then comes the orange one, which is fare, and comes the car in BRT scenario. So in BRT scenario, if you implement BRTs, people are shifting towards public transportation. So people are not taking their car for the longer distances, or the distances that they usually travel. Instead they are moving to public transportation. So that's what you observe here. So this trend is observed in case of autos and in case of two-wheelers as well. Only in the case of public transportation, in case of bus, you observe an increase in the average distance that is traveled. See, by implementing fare restructuring scenario, what we have observed is there is an increase in the short and medium length trips, 6 to 12 kilometers of BMTC buses, by around 13 to 14% when compared to BAU. Okay. While decreasing the ridership of the other private modes in the same trip length range by more than 15%. So there is a 15% reduction in the private modes, and 13 to 14% increase in bus ridership. Similarly, in BRT scenario, the ridership of BMTC increased by 20% because of the faster connectivity and dedicated bus lanes, and reduced the ridership of private modes by 30%. So from here you can come to a conclusion that BRT is providing you a better result. It's not just talking about BRT, it's about what is the factor that is getting affected, travel time or travel cost, right. So
but essentially the point is not to compare between fare restructuring and BRT. We can also try another scenario where we do both the things, fare restructuring as well as BRT. It's just what level of intervention you're doing and what level of impact you may make. So it's not that BRT is better over fare structuring. The idea is the level of impact and output that you would gain also depends on level of intervention. But the point to drive is also that even with simple fare restructuring, you can achieve a lot of positive impacts.
Yeah. So then we have developed our own mode choice model. We have considered 7 modes: car, two-wheeler, auto, cycling, walking, bus, metro, and all that. And you consider variables, a lot of variables, and then travel costs, travel time of buses, two-wheelers, and all that. So we have employed multinomial logic model for this, and then we have come up with these, this might look like tables and values and all that. So what essentially these are the utility, like what is the effect that you are having on your utility. So here, if you look at this, so here this is the only section where you have positive value, everywhere else it's negative. So how you can read this is, let us say in vehicle travel time of bus minus 0.086. So what it means that, if your in vehicle travel time is increasing, your utility is decreasing by this much amount. So similarly here you have a positive utility here, because if the purpose of traveling is school, people usually prefer bike because their utility is increased, right. So that is how you analyze this entire table. And here again, if you look at gender negative values, you can see. So here usually in model we consider male, you give a value of 1 for male and 0 for female. So what you're seeing here is, in another sense, how you can interpret this is, female passengers are more likely to travel in metro, bus, cycling, auto, and their own two-wheelers. So their utility is more if they travel on these modes, and male utility reduces if they travel on bike, auto, and all that. So that is how you interpret this entire. Similarly, if the travel cost of bus is increasing, your utility is reducing, right. If your travel cost of metro is increasing, your utility is reducing. So like that. So depending on this you can maybe you can develop another scenario or a policy saying that by tweaking these values, how much I can improve my utility, right. So once we do this, how the mode share, how it's translated into this mode shares. So you can see that there is, by changing the fare, there is an increase in the mode share in all the in bus, and in metro there is a slight increase if you increase the fare in buses, if you taper the fare in buses. And you can observe that in private modes there is a reduction in in car. You can observe that there is a reduction in the mode share. People are shifting from car to buses. So you can look here, shift from car uses to bus and two-wheelers. So people are shifting. So now car has become a little costly for them, and you are providing BRT. So most of the traffic is like bus traffic is shifted to a different lane. Now there is enough enough space for the people to travel, and two-wheeler has higher speeds compared to car. So people are seen to be shifting towards two-wheelers as well. Short trips are attracted by bus, and little longer trips are attracted by two-wheelers. So that is what I was mentioning earlier. And if you convert this into revenue, right, you have two scenarios, and what was the revenue that is being generated is 49.6 million, which was given to us by BMTC. And if you employ the fare restructuring scenario, you can see that there is a 15% growth from BAU, and it is 57 million, and 61 million if you employ BRT. Like sir was mentioning, it was not a comparison, both of them are good. Like which one is better in this scenario is what I am trying to show. Both the scenarios have their own benefits. So that's what you need to understand. And when you translate this into vehicle kilometers traveled, your VKT is coming down in fare scenario, and in BRT scenario it's coming much more down, because there is, so when you talk about reductions in VKT, you need to think in a broader perspective. Why is it reducing? It's because people are shifting to public transportation, and because of the huge the occupancy values of let it be bus or metro. If 100 people, if let us say occupancy of value of one bus is 70, and 70 two-wheelers are traveling on a road or on a car. If they are traveling for 1 kilometer, the bus VKT would be 1, but two-wheelers VKT would be 70, car two-wheel VKT would be 70. So 70 is shifting into just one vehicle. So that is the reduction. So that's how you need to analyze, like how much you are pulling into your public transportation in terms of, in case of bus. That's what, if something. Yeah, and again, so this is a graphical representation of the same that which I've showed in the earlier study also. So this is the BAU scenario where you can see this black, roads are quite congested, V by Cs are quite high and all that. And once you do a fair scenario, you don't see that much congestion on different sections of the road, although you still see a few here and there. Now there are few sections in this where we have considered BRT. So once you implement BRT scenario, you don't see these sections also, which are that. So what I'm saying is your V by Cs are quite reduced in case of BRT scenario, because of the high speeds, less travel times. And again, we have translated this into emissions. Again, we have calculated emissions for all the pollutants and all that. So what you observe here is the percentage decrease of per capita CO2 emissions from BAU is 7% here again, and from BA to scenario 2 is 7.4%. Not too much of difference, but there is a considerable difference, because this is again tons per year, right? Yeah, again per capita emissions, you can see that car has higher per capita emissions when it comes to bus transport. And in fact, bus has it might look like it is higher here. Like I said, occupancy values play a major role when it comes to contributing per person. So that is what you can see here. Buses, when you travel in bus, you emit, your contribution to emissions is less. So that is what you see here. And here in all the cases, you can see that this is increasing, and in private vehicles you can see that the trend is decreasing. So this is increasing because you're, like I said, you're adding ridership to your buses. So in order to cater to that ridership, you need to add a few more buses, but it's reducing here. Yeah, it's reducing here because when it comes to per capita, you have huge ridership now, and then when you distribute it among this huge ridership, you are reducing the traffic, the emissions. So later what we have done is we have converted this into the revenue, how much revenue is being generated. So this is from the BMTC website, EPKM and CPKM and all that. So 42.34 EPKM and 58.65 cost per cost of operation per kilometer. And then we have estimated earnings per kilometer per passenger and cost of operation per kilometer per passenger, and what is the margin of traffic revenue per kilometer that we are generating. Okay. So this is the calculations that we have done. We already have the VKTs, and we have the base traffic, the other details like EPKM, CPKM and all that. So based on that, we try to estimate. We also have the ridership information for the current year and the future years. So and then what we have done is we have estimated what is the earnings per kilometer per passenger. Okay. So I will show this in a plot, so then you will get a clear picture. So what you can see is, in BAU scenario, your earnings per kilometer per passenger is 0.91. So this is in rupees. Okay. In scenario 1, you are increasing your earnings. In scenario 2, you are furthermore increasing your earnings. Similarly, if you observe in cost of operation, so you are reducing the cost of operation in terms of fare scenario and in terms of BRT scenario as well. So this is because the reduction in fare structure because of reduction in fare structure for shorter trips and introduction of BRT line, there is an increase in ridership for the public transport. So again, so you're getting more revenue from them. So that's why your earnings are increasing and your cost of operation is reducing, right? And how you translate this into the margin. So although this is still in negatives, what you are seeing here is that there is a reduction in the losses that BMTC is getting. Okay, so it was minus 0.35 from this it has come down to 0.19, which is a 46% reduction. And if you implement a BRT scenario, you can further reduce the losses by 76%. Okay. So what we are suggesting here is loss can be further reduced by increasing the service quality. And so like we've mentioned earlier, this we have analyzed as two different policies, right? There is maybe BMTC can go into profits with the data if we evaluate both of them together as a single policy. Okay, so that can happen. So that maybe we can try it in the future.
So just to again take some points from, so the idea of taking these two scenarios is, one is when you look at the BMTC decisions from time to time, every time there is some increase in the petrol or diesel cost, they suddenly sit together and decides, okay, we'll increase the fare by this much, without realizing how the demand elasticity will play out and how this overall dynamics would happen in terms of how you would impact the mode share, how it would impact your earnings and your cost, and whether you think that you may increase your revenue by increasing the fare, but whether it's actually happening or not, or by actually reducing fare you may end up having more revenues or reduce your losses. So in the absence of this kind of understanding and understanding of demand elasticity, they keep doing things which actually creates a vicious circle for the corporation itself, where they keep on increasing the fare and they realize that their losses are actually increasing. Okay, that's one thing. The other thing is, every time BMTC goes and present to the government and says, we need, because professors like us would keep saying, have bus lanes, have bus priority and so on, and there are a lot of intelligent people who will say that where is the space for buses? If you give space for buses, what will happen to the traffic and so on. So this kind of nonsensical arguments keep coming, but in the absence of this kind of scientific decision support as to what is the real impact. I mean, you are taking space from certain set of vehicles and giving to certain set of vehicle, which is buses, but eventually what is that it is doing to your traffic congestion? You don't get that picture. Somebody thinks that, oh, if you take one lane, rest of the traffic is getting restricted to and you have one lane less for the rest of the traffic, so it's all going to add congestion and so on. This is how the philosophy brings in. So tomorrow if BMTC wants to take this matter again, they can at least give a clear understanding that, look, this is what is going to happen if you take space from other vehicles and give it for buses. It's not just would improve my profitability, but would also improve certain parameters for everybody in the city. In fact, BMTC has now again taken up, during this project itself, first day itself, I got a letter from BMTC MD that they are now planning to introduce BRT in certain sections. They've got a report or something and they want my inputs and suggestions, because accordingly then they will go to Chief Secretary and impress upon him to start implementing BRT lanes on certain sections. So again, these kind of studies and results are very useful for corporations, public transport corporations, to make that case very strongly to the decision makers, the politicians.
Yeah, so come to the end. So what we have observed so far is, we have, had two scenarios here, fare restructuring and, BRT lanes. And we have observed that, both of them are good in their, own respectives, right? There may be pros and cons, but both are doing, their own benefit to the society here in reducing emissions, vehicle kilometers traveled, shift in the mode towards public transportation and all that. Yeah. So the ridership, of BMTC is increasing, and they are generating revenues and all that. So yeah. So both the scenarios together. So like I was mentioning earlier, so we have done this separately. Both of the scenarios have been evaluated separately. But if we can do that together, ridership of BMTC and revenue, can even be more. The results can be better, and it can create a sustainable environment, in the city. Yeah, so the earnings per kilometers have already improved, and the cost per kilometers have come down considerably. So that is the essence of this two studies that we have done. Thank you.
Thanks, Harsha. Any questions? Yeah, please.
Sir, those visual, geographical images, as a layman, I just wanted to know how to get that. So
Yeah, actually, they are, of course, you derive the outputs from your 4-stage travel demand model, which basically gives me the traffic volume, estimated traffic volume on each and every road of the city. Yeah, I'm coming to that. I'm explaining that. This is done using soft computing tools. There are softwares like Transcad, Cube, Visum, which basically helps us run these models, okay, and derive outputs. They also come with a strong GIS interface. So these outputs that I have, the link-wise, traffic volumes, I am then able to throw it onto my GIS database, and it also has capacity. Okay, so then it also calculates V/C ratio and use a color-coded theme map to generate those. So can you just go back to one of those networks? Just go back. Yeah. So what it is using is, there are two themes we are using here. One is the thickness and other is the color. The thickness depicts the amount of traffic volume as a theme, and the color depicts the V/C ratio. So it's very, visually very easy to understand. You can even explain it very easily to a politician, rather than throwing numbers in a table, which they'll never have. And it also gives us a spatial understanding. You get a spatial, understanding as to how this is all panning out. So these are very useful ways to, I use a lot of this when I make the same presentation to a public forum, to a citizens forum, where they'll not understand the technicalities of this work. So I don't use these equations. I basically use these graphical ways to make my point very clear to them as to what's happening with the city. Yeah. Any other question? Yeah.
This is a network level analysis, so we are able to predict the future advantages. But if you take a particular junction, like in Nagpur, there is a junction where it is a high road junction and it is a flyover of one way. So now they are planning to demolish because it is an unsignalized junction. There are many accidents taking place. So they are planning to demolish the flyover. So if you take a particular junction, this kind of analysis can't be implemented in that particular junction. So there are two different scenarios because it is a network level.
See, it depends on what level of intervention the government is doing, and accordingly at what level of analysis that you would like to look at. Okay. For example, there is junction and we are just tweaking the traffic signal timings. Okay. You of course won't expect a substantial impact on the network level V/C because of that, but it may have some local impact at the junction, but also maybe in the nearby junctions. Okay. So in that case, maybe you look at just a sub area, and maybe you focus on more microscopic simulation rather than macroscopic simulation. This is macroscopic simulation. Okay. So where you anticipate a more wider network level impact, you go for a network level impact assessment. Otherwise, you take a sub area analysis or look at more micro simulation approach rather than macro simulation approach. Yeah.
Just to add to that, Vissim, so this was done in Transcad. Transcad is a macro level, analysis software, and Vissim you can do for
micro simulation. Any other question? Good. So we have thrown a lot of case studies in the second half. Hope this gives a variety of understanding of how these modeling systems can be used. How do you get that power to influence decision making? We have at least tried ourselves, and in many cases have been successful in stopping some of these mad projects in the city, and also impressing upon some good things. Maybe Jitu would agree with this one, isn't it? And we have used all ways of communicating our results, either directly by going to these people and impressing upon what our analysis says, or going through media and let media talk about these results, or through public forums where public or people or citizens get a more clear understanding of what impact these projects would make, and whether they are good for their own selves or not, or for their community or not. So we have to realize the power of these scientific modeling approaches or quantitative ways, and use it for making as much impact as possible, without really fearing what. So in this city, most of the time the politicians don't like me, because my my words and my opinions sounds to them like noise, not music. But still, being a professor, being somebody who can analyze these things in an unbiased manner, should come out and say things, what is right and what is wrong. It's up to them then to do what they want to do. But at least we can make that influence. So use that power to make that influence. Good, so we'll take a short break. Don't go anywhere, just go to your place where you stay, have a sleep and come back. We'll start again at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Thank you.